try to just talk to them about how to interview. And then we decided maybe that wasn't enough. So we started something that we've been doing for quite some time, and we love it. And that's our interview process. So we changed the final exam and kind of our exit process for students in their final course to an interview format. So I use, and some of the people on this call have been part of this process for me, thank you very much, for years. I don't think Robin's ever missed one, to be quite honest. But what we now do is I get a bunch of different people who work at MCC. Usually faculty members work out the best because you already all work with students, so you're very comfortable in that forum. But some administrators participate. I've had staff members participate, and we come up with a committee of 4 or 5 people for each student in the class. And each student then comes to a 1-hour interview. It's their final exam. So they're petrified and terrified, but they come to a panel interview, and all we really do is send them a letter that says this, they choose the times ahead, but this is when your interview will be. And then we evaluate them from the moment they get there. So they're evaluated on what they wear, how they check in at the desk with the secretary, what they say, what they do while they're waiting. And we bring them in for about a 30-minute, it's usually less, maybe 20, 25-minute interview. And we go around the table just like we do at MCC interviews, taking turns asking questions. And the questions come from all different classes that they've had in their program. So they're not real picky and detailed, but general big concepts that they should be able to explain. And then when we're done with that part, we send them back out into the hallway, which is probably really scary. And we all sit in the room and talk about them for 10 or 15 minutes. And then we bring them back in and we give them immediate feedback about how their interview was. So we're looking at interview skills, professionalism pieces, along with the actual content of their answers. And it's really been great. And the students, after they've had a few days, say it was one of the best experiences they've had. We're all really supportive and kind, giving feedback. But this year we had a new problem in the spring, which was now we're not in person. And we decided to go ahead and do Zoom interviews because that's what the world is doing. And it did change a lot of things for them, but it actually was a pretty successful experience. You know, they had to learn how to do it. We had things that we've never had before. One girl who apparently probably posted her notes up on the computer and spent the whole time looking off to the side reading to us, things that we just wouldn't have had in an in-person interview, but good experiences for us to be able to talk to them and sort of correct. We have not, Jim, videotaped it before. The first time I thought about that was on this Zoom call, and I'm actually really considering that because I think it would help them to have that to go back and look at. But I think that's a really great question. You know, it's been really kind of fun. I don't, Robin, Melissa, you've been, Christine's been to them. So, you know, I'm not sure what your thoughts are, but I always think they're really positive, and I think the students do too. We give lots of suggestion, but we give a lot of really important encouragement for them. We talk about all the things they've done well. I try to get somebody from English, somebody maybe from speech, and then people from lots of other areas, some who do have background knowing about the theory and about early childhood, and some who really don't, because you have to explain differently when people don't all have our same background. But that's been one of those ideas about how do we help them do something that's going to help them not only to be professional while they're at MCC, but to help them as they leave MCC. And we're always looking for ideas about just this. How do we teach professionalism? How do we sort of pull it out of them? And I think even how much harder is it right now when you're not seeing everybody face to face and being able to model it maybe in the same way that we would if we were in the same room with everybody all the time.
You know, I'll chime in real quick too. I think when you can create an assignment like this or an activity like this that really culminates everything that you're doing in the class, and it fits really nicely into the early childhood kind of program that they have. But honestly, when I first started doing it, I just couldn't believe some of the students who, you know, even though they'd been practicing and talking about all this stuff, they walked in, they didn't shake anybody's hand. Some of them, they didn't give out their resumes. They bring with them these big portfolio binders of a lot of great stuff they've done, and they never opened it, like never, you know, never talk. I mean, it's really fascinating when you see how little, I think, you know, our young students, you know, they don't have those experiences. And so this is an amazing kind of activity that not only really does help with everything they've done in the program all year long, but it really gives them a nice little taste of what it might be, you know, in an actual interview. I mean, it's a great way for us to say, hey, so when you go to the interviews and you bring this, use it, pass this out. And, you know, this, we even talked to them about firm handshakes, right? You know, things that a lot of them, you know, they haven't had what I would call a professional interview yet, right? They've done a fast food or
a lot of those, we're teaching a lot of those skills.
Yeah.
So actually Laura Power comes in a couple of weeks before the interview every single time, and they bring a rough draft of their resume, and she goes through them with them one-on-one, talking to them, helping them to update resumes, and people will come in and help me with, this is what it looks like. You walk around and you're going to shake hands with every person. You're going to take your resume out and do that. And they really look at us like, oh, I had no idea. Right. And now we're looking at the possibility of moving to, you know, digital portfolios and figuring out, but still that's even going to take a lot of, what do you do with this? How do you manage this? Because it's just a lot of things that they don't know to do. So just kind of an interesting one piece of something that we do. And I'm curious to know, you know, what are the rest of you doing? How do you build this in to your class? That's what we're trying to do, is make it not so isolated all the time as we're just going to stop and now teach professionalism over here, but for them to get a good sense of that consistently moving through, that they have a good opportunity on a regular basis to practice what it is we'd like to see from them.
You actually just gave me an idea for the Math 201 students, to have them start teaching each other a little more, because they're going to be future teachers. So they have to be comfortable. I've had them a little bit getting up in front of the class, but that just gave me the idea to have them presenting material to each other more, so they get used to speaking to an audience.
Yes.
Because they're going to be teachers. And even with other math classes, I think having students explain problems that they're solving, demonstrate, just having them do it more. And Zoom is great. You can put them in breakout rooms so you can have those smaller groups. So that actually just gave me some good ideas for my own classroom.
I think it's a great idea. And you're right, they need the practice. Sherry, were you going to say something? And then I think Fran.
Yeah, I have a project in my introduction to business class, and it's called the Greeting Project. Obviously, I didn't do it this semester, but I talked to them about having a firm handshake and looking people in the eye, and when they meet someone, saying who they are, and they have to, at some point during this semester, come up and introduce themselves to me. I give a date that it has to be done by. And so a lot of them will come in, you know, and do it right away. And then just to make it something fun, I'll give them one of those little hand clappers. You know, if they get it done, that's something. But we also talk about in many of our projects and our assignments about professionalism being, you're there on time, you're doing what you say you're going to do. Then when they do a presentation, there's always an outcome, a professionalism outcome. Did they speak, you know, instead of saying stuff, oh, there's stuff like this, it's like, no, let's use a more professional word. You know, what do you mean by stuff? So we do quite a bit of that in our courses.
I think too, even just that idea, like it sounds so basic about come up and introduce yourself. It's sort of what Robin said earlier. We forget that they don't have those basic skill set. You can't make that assumption that they all know how to do that.
Yeah. And some of them, it'll be, hey, or, what's up? Like, okay, again, you're in a professional setting. If you're at a mixer, you're not just going to go up to the president of Bank of America and say, what's up? Right. So maybe you'll do that if Deke was the president. I don't know.
Yeah. Yes. Rob or Francisco?
Yeah. For me, like especially like in micro is, when you're talking about little things, for me, it's, just having a clean, functional workspace. So you just kind of slowly over time, something as small as this right here, the little Flint striker. And since my micro class is predominantly female, most people don't even know how to use this and how to use it properly and how not to gas themselves, if you will. And it's just keeping that clean, safe work environment is always the biggest thing for us that we continually work on throughout the semester. And there are things that they get graded on and scored on and how they use and how they progress through the semester. So.
But if you think about that, for some of them who may actually want to do something where they might work in a lab or work in an environment like that, it's another one of those things where you think that's very, very basic. How is it that we keep this area clean and functional, and not everybody knows to do that?
Right, it is.
And there it's a safety issue.
Yep. And, you look at a nurse going into a patient's room and how they, again, hygienically, keep their materials, and as hygienic of a quality as possible is so huge just for the patient and for the nurse.
Who was going to say something? Fran, were you going to say something?
Yeah. I guess we're a little unusual being in fire and rescue because we're not teaching a degree program. We're teaching, more of a certificate where these guys, they're employable after a semester or a year. So in the fire science, we actually have chiefs come in and do a mock interview. But even in my 101 class with EMS, I require a dress code. I mean, obviously not strict, but it's like, bras and boxers and cracks and cleavage. And honey, I don't want to see it. Phones have to be off or silenced. If their phones go off during class, they have to bring treats. Just little things like that, you don't think about, but these kids really have no idea. They don't know how they're presenting. And we try to teach them that from day one, at least in our industry, they are making connections, they're making impressions. And they could meet somebody in one of my skills sessions and, a year up the road, have that interview. And there is that person who's going to say, wow, this guy really kicked butt in class, or he was a real sluggo. And so we try to ingrain from day one that this is where we at, and we're constantly making impressions.
Right. And Sherry made a comment earlier, even about how they introduce themselves or their greetings. And I'm betting I can't be the only one who is at times having to remind students about that in their written work. Think about the emails they're sending you. Mm-hmm. And, the work they turn in that has emojis in it or says LOL through it or something like those are things that I would have never thought I would have to remind. I is a capital letter. Come on, we need to do that, but they're so used to texting it and not worrying about those things that they often don't have that ability to think about how that transfers over into the emails they send or the written work that they're turning in for a grade that has some of that in it too. And I wonder about those pieces. We're modeling them for them and trying to show them, but sometimes they don't pick up on that heavy duty modeling that I'm doing.
As a department, we addressed that. We work together as a department as something when a student sends an email that's unprofessional, or when you get this email that it says assignment, then it says, when's it due? Yeah. What assignment, which class, what, and so we came up with a flyer. And if we get one of those, we respond saying, please see the attached. And it says, you must have sent a communication that was not to the professional standards for a college student to your instructor. Please look over the following. Did you address me? Instead of saying just when's it due, did you address me? Was your reference very specific to what you needed an answer for? Did you have a timeline on it? It has a whole bunch of different stuff, and they get it. I've only had to send that out twice, and I got a nasty gram back on one of them. But some of it they just don't know. But
Ooh, can I borrow that?
When's the assignment due?
Share that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I do too, because I think, we then spend, what typically happens is we then spend inordinate amounts of time trying to figure out what assignment it is and what it is they want and trying to respond to be helpful. And some of this really should just go back on them about, well, let's try this again. Send me something that makes sense, and then maybe I can respond. And so, I think sometimes there's that fine line between we really want to support and help them. We know they don't know, but there's also a point where they have to become a little bit more accountable. These are skills that they need to develop.
Right.
And we, as we're trying to teach them how to be more professional, if we build it into our assignments, we also have to hold them accountable for doing it. That's the other piece of it, is when they don't, what is it that you're doing about that?
And how do you guys handle the grammar issue? It drives me batty. The where, your. I mean, we're writing EMS reports that are part of they're a permanent medical record. And I try to instill to these guys, what, you go to court and a lawyer's going to chew you up and spit you out if you can't even write a proper sentence. I don't know. I've never seen such a programmer in my life as in the last 3 or 4 years. How do you guys deal with it?
I wonder how much of that is because of some of the texting and some of the quick messaging and things, and people don't take the time to go back and proofread anything or look at it. They don't all have a good sense of the grammar pieces either. We've talked about with some of our classes, maybe they need to take comp before they take this, or they might need to do this before this. I don't know if that would necessarily help or make a whole lot of difference, but I see it. I don't have an answer to it, but I see it as well.
I have a couple thoughts.
Go ahead, Sue.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I just have a couple thoughts on a couple of things that we've been talking about. One, I didn't realize how poor my grammar was until I actually used the app Grammarly. And I'm actually thinking that might be a great app for the kids, because I don't know if, maybe every one of you have heard about it, but it corrects your grammar. And so when you're writing, it will correct and tell you, and it's free. And so that might be a site that the kids can go to help just kind of correct just basic grammar. My other thought is that I like the idea, I'm going to go back. I like the idea of giving the students maybe not necessarily a reward, but when I first start my class out, I pretty much say, we start at 8:30. This is when I start. If you are late, then you will miss it. You will miss the beginning, and it is your responsibility to make up. And I've had students come in and say, what do we talk about? And my response back to them is, you need to go back to ask questions to other students because you weren't here on time. So I pretty much call them out on being on time. And I really haven't had too much trouble with the kids not being on time because they know I won't go back. And then in my rubrics, when I do a lot of lab testing the kids, and in my rubrics, I am always having the kids introduce themselves, explain what they're doing, eye contact, and they get dinged if they do not do it. So I'm constantly reinforcing, this is what a clinician does. This is what you'll have to do in the clinics. This is what I expect. And when they first do it, they're awkward. But then once we go through it, I do it a number of times. Once we go through it, then they're getting more comfortable with introducing themselves and telling what they're going to do. So anyway, so those are my thoughts on a couple of the topics we've kind of gone over.
I think
I wanted to chime in. Sorry. I want to chime in about Grammarly because I was complaining about grammar while I was grading the other day. And my son, who is in 8th grade, was like, well, don't your students use Grammarly? Like, you install it into Google Doc and it corrects it automatically.
Yes.
And no, I don't think our students do use it. But I think it's helpful to clarify the purpose of assignments and the type of assignments. And I got this from that summer book study, the writing tips, the Kichi's writing or teaching tips, that there are different levels of assessment. And so like I have short essays that I correct grammar on, but I don't ding for it the way that I do on a formal writing assignment. And I think we often aren't really clear with our students, like this is the assignment where everything has to be correct. Like here's the format you're following. It needs to look like this, as opposed to like a free writing assignment. And if we can clarify that for ourselves, which I hadn't really thought through too much before that summer book study, then I think we can be more clear with our students.
Yeah.
May
No,
I just
that's a good
add,
point.
oh, sorry, may I just add one point since everyone's talking about Grammarly? We have the contract with Turnitin. It has built-in grammar check. So we can do more training on that, not mean to, change the topic, but just want folks know. It has built-in function of that.
Yeah. The one thing I would say about, I think Grammarly is very good actually. And I do think that part of the issue that we've seen in the last few years is that students became very complacent using certain technology or spell checks and various things, but that doesn't always correct grammar. And I think they just relied on that to do it. And again, just became complacent in the fact that, if they had lowercase, letters or the grammar wasn't correct or the wording wasn't correct because that's not, found in the word, spell check, they didn't care, and nobody maybe held them accountable in the past. So I do think that it's important to do that, and I like Grammarly. And I was going to say too, I think part of it is introducing students to technology that can be helpful for them, because when they do go out into the world, they're going to need some of that technology, right? And that's part of, understanding, like you said, with the emails, using proper grammar, being able to experience different, you guys were talking about presentations. Gail, I always typically, and this semester is going to be different, right? Next semester too, but I typically choose a chapter, and it's one of those chapters that's really easy to put students into small groups, divvy up the chapter, and they teach that part of the, of the chapter. And it's kind of fun. I don't, it's formal, but it's not formal. I keep it low stress, but it gives them, and I tell them it's not, not all of them are going to become teachers, but it's about good communication. It's about working with other people, right? It's about doing your part. It's about looking up, researching, a particular topic. It's about taking a big piece, chunk of information and narrowing it down to the part that you play within that presentation. So I think all of that is really important. I started also focusing a little bit more on talking about careers. Now, for us in psychology, we can talk about different careers in psychology. I will say too, I also have brought in the last couple of years some community speakers, to speak on particular topics. But I think those are very good role models as well. I mean, we're role models for them. But if you have an opportunity to bring a professional that's in your discipline who can come and teach or talk even about their job and what they're doing, and it weaves into the material that you're doing, I think that's a great way to show them, here comes a professional, and typically they all model good behavior as well. Anytime you can get students to provide feedback to other students, right? Because in the real world, at some point they're going to have to do that potentially, especially if they, want certain jobs where they're supervising people. We're kind of lucky. We have times in the semester we can talk about emotional intelligence. So we can talk about being mature, how to be respectful to people, understanding your emotions and other people and their emotions. But I think whenever you can weave that in is really important. The last thing I'll say is when Catherine Jones started talking about, internships and job shadowing, and the workforce work that they're doing is really amazing stuff. And it fits so nicely with CTE, kind of, disciplines. We had not had that. And we've had students ask us, we have Psi Beta, it's the 2-year National Honor Society for Psychology. So we have students who really want to make careers out of, in psychology, and we weren't really offering anything. And we started having those conversations last year. Of course, we hooked up with an organization. We got some potential internships going. We were looking at an internal kind of job shadowing, just using our full-time, our adjunct instructors, and kind of, having students go spend a day. Not that they're all going to be teachers, but, like almost any other discipline, guys, you could all do this because we went to different schools. We thought about, our career in different ways. Maybe we came into teaching and had different paths. Many of us worked outside in our field before we came and taught. So I think that's another thing that we should think about, even being on the, those of us on the academic side, it doesn't mean that we can't do some of these things. And I was super excited about it. And then COVID hit and we're kind of shut down for a little bit. But, when we get that green light again, I think that's something we're going to do that's really going to help some of those students maybe get some experiences much earlier, right? Than waiting to their even senior year in college, where they can potentially maybe make some career decisions and get some of those experiences. All right, I've said enough, but I had a whole bunch of ideas in my head, but those are just some of my thoughts.
Well, I do think when we look at this, it probably does look a lot different on the CTE side. And we're looking at all of us talking about professionalism with our students. We're all thinking it's important, but it is a little bit different when we're talking about specific careers that, they're going right into this. This is what you have to have for this. And they're pretty much everyone in our early childhood program is pretty much going to be, they're going to do the same job. They want to be a teacher in an early childhood program. And so it's a little easier to sort of define that and figure out what it would look like. And I'm curious to know, some of you, from English, from philosophy, from biology, like what are you seeing? Are you having the same kinds of concerns, issues we are? Does it look different for you?
I'm gonna talk. My name is Ritu. I teach the environmental science courses at NCC. Before I kind of jumped into this, and I was just curious to see what you talk in this, this course on professionalism. And I'm just kind of thinking back and reflecting. I do not incorporate that as a piece of professionalism in my course. However, now, as I reflect, I definitely do have components of presentation definitely in my course. And what I've noticed is that students who seem to be shy, when they're given an opportunity to present and they cannot escape out of it, obviously they are on the edge and they feel anxious. But it also surprises me at times to see, the part that they come up with. So sometimes it's like, the students feel that they cannot present and they probably hesitate to do. But once they own that space and present it in front of students, they do exceptionally well. And probably that's a time where they haven't realized, that's one moment probably they have never ever tried. But it gives them a boost of, confidence, if I may, that first time they spoke and they had the ability to present their ideas in a convincing way to others. So I definitely feel that it's a very important communication piece. And so, I do have it always incorporated in my courses. Something else that I wanted to share, slipping out, kind of in line with what Robin said, I experimented with having guest speakers in my course who are in the same line from outside. And that's really it's a big value addition to the courses that at least for me, I personally can say that, showing them exactly how things happen in the real world is very convincing. And it just ties the two pieces together. And then also talking about, what can you do after you move out from this course? Where can you go? Showing them the volunteer internship opportunities, because they just kind of lose it. Okay, I'm done with the course, and then what? So it kind of, at least for me, I've noticed that it gives a spark to, I wouldn't say the whole class, but students who are really keen on pursuing the subject, they would definitely see value in it, and they most often thank you for that. So those are just comments, I think, that I kind of wanted to make.
See lots of people nodding with you. It's something that must have kind of struck home, and I don't know if you're all looking at the chat, but Steve was saying, that there's less emphasis on attention to professionalism now that we're online in the philosophy classes. But I think, that's an interesting idea too. What are you seeing as different now that the format of some of our classes has changed? And I'm with you, Steve. I really like Sherry's email policy too, because I haven't either. I comment on it. Usually I send a copy of it to Melissa and say, look at this, but I don't necessarily always do anything with the student, or I say things like, oh my gosh, I'm on my 4th email with this person trying to figure out what she's even talking about. And I'm getting frustrated, but I don't necessarily do anything other than say, I'm not understanding. What can you try to re-explain it to me? But holding them more accountable might really help. So let's talk about online art.
I was just going to say something about that, like with even what Steve was saying about, this professionalism. I don't know if you guys are feeling it, but I'm just noticing this week, for some reason, this week, my students are just not in it. Like my class right before it is my best class, out of all of them, even my face-to-face class, this one via Zoom that I'm teaching on Tuesdays and Thursdays is my best class. They're always engaged. Not one person put their video on, they were on video. Nobody respond. It was so, I don't know if this week, just maybe because what's going on in the community and people are feeling stressed, but I think that that's definitely playing a part in, our students not even addressing professionalism, sending us quick emails that are panic rather than any, I don't even know what you're asking me. What test you're not taking a test. What class are you talking about? What, I think they're all just kind of in panic mode right now too. And so it's so hard, I think for me as an instructor, I don't always want to, be so strict right now about certain things because they're on edge. They're so stressed out that but at the same time, I feel it, the emails really bother me. I'm glad we were talking about that because I have no idea what people are saying to me half the time. I don't know if you guys are feeling that too.
I agree with Melissa, sorry, but I do feel like the students are kind of stressed right now. And I just feel like it's probably good to be empathetic to them. So I'm kind of, willing to be a little more on the lenient side, just kind of taking care of the entire situation, how it is. But I'm sure people have different opinions on that.
Well, I just wanted to say I teach one of the flex lecturing classes, and I, in my syllabus, told them that they have to be seen on camera. They cannot just have their name on there. And when they do it and you just see their foreheads, I tell them, no, I have to see your face. And in the last couple of weeks, I've had a couple of them that they are signing into the class because it's where you can attend in person or via Zoom. It's recorded so you can watch it later, but they sign in bed. And I tell them that's not professional. I said, right. You are in a class. Yes, you are attending the class via Zoom, but you need to get up and get out of bed. And I do boot them out. And they know if they get removed from the Zoom room, they can't come back on the rest of the day. Zoom won't let them come back on.
Yeah. I agree with you, Sherry. And I two things real quick. Folks, we are in, from a time perspective, a period where no one thought this was going to last this long.
Right.
And the continued uncertainty is going to become a much bigger mental health issue as the months roll on here. So they have that, this pandemic, a different type of learning that many of them were not expecting, even though many have adjusted,
Mm-hmm.
you still have a small percentage that is not. And honestly, you have a weather change. This is just the truth in regards to the weather and what the end of kind of, fall means, that going into winter, the end of the year, and people getting very kind of still upset, again, with uncertainty and things continuing to close down. Seems like it's getting worse than, not getting better. On top of that, you have a situation where we're through the 11th week of the semester, and you have students who are just now realizing they are in trouble. There's not 15 weeks left to save themselves. So I think students themselves, and I'm sure all of you, it's exhausting and it's tiring, and some of them have put themselves in that place. But I think there's just so many variables right now from an overall kind of looking at it from a mental health kind of state, that as flexible and caring as you can be is what we should be doing. I'm not justifying, it's certainly not anything goes, but because again, we're talking about professionalism, so we definitely want them, right, to show us something. And I think, Lisha, you had mentioned about the accountability. I think that's incredibly important, right? Keeping them accountable. One thing I did this semester, and I don't know if you guys are all aware of it, but last year Canvas added a new feature where you can add like a late policy to all your assignments in the course. And I don't know if you're all aware of that or not, or how you use it, but I started using that, and I set it to 10% late penalty points, right, for each day late. And you can do an hour, but it's just each day late. And what I started doing is I made due dates, and then I told them, but I didn't have like an available, like I didn't have a cutoff date. It's like the last day of the semester, right? And what I said is, hey, this is what the deal is. There's a due date, and if you get it done by the due date, you are eligible for maximum points, right? You can get full credit. However, if you miss it for whatever reason, and I'm not going to judge you on that, you can do it the next day, or even the day after, and you're only missing a few points, right? That's so much better than a zero. And then I tried to explain to them what I really like about that is, in most situations, that's how the real world is. If Lisha came today and said, gosh, I'm only got one or two questions, I don't have another question, or I didn't do part B, none of us would be like, Lisha, we'd be like, cool, let's all, let's help you, or let's all just talk about this. In the real world, deadlines are important, but can we be flexible? Yeah, we are flexible. We also have sick time, so students do get sick too. There's got to be a little bit, I guess I'm saying, I think there's a little bit of balance. And when you can even set up assignments to have a little bit of flexibility and balance. And again, I'm not telling them I'm doing it because I'm a nice person. I'm telling them, I'm being honest and upfront with the students. And I'm saying, listen, in the real world, if there's deadlines and you meet the deadlines, it's better for you, right? But if you miss a deadline, in many situations, it's not going to be the end of the world. And so I think when we can model that, and then a student misses a day, and I've been telling them this every day since the semester, and I still get students who say, I totally forgot about this, it was due yesterday. Can I do it today? I said, you sure can. It's going to be 10% late points, right? They're like, okay, and so, it still gives them a little confidence boost too. I was going to say something else, but I can't remember, but yeah, it's good stuff. Good stuff, you guys.
I just wanted to tag team there in terms of like being upfront with students. Like we were talking about grammar before, and the other day I didn't necessarily plan to have this talk with my students, but I am a grammar Nazi. I correct everything in their papers. I can't stop myself from doing it, but I don't necessarily deduct a lot of points depending on the assignment. And we were talking about this because I'm like, okay, so this was an error I saw that most people made. Let's talk about this. And I'm like, I know that all of you have turned in work before that your teacher did not read and they did not care. And maybe they even knew what grade you were going to get on it before you turned it in. But you know now that I read every word that you write. And it might annoy you, but at least you know that I care and I'm actually reading it. And they all laughed and thought that was so funny. And I thought that was such a good moment in terms of holding them accountable and also expressing kind of where I am. Because I'm like, you going back to like capitalizing the letter I, like that is something you have to do. If you can't write a sentence, people are going to make assumptions about your intelligence that you're not going to appreciate.
It's all about those basics.
That's true. I've remembered what I was going to say too, and it kind of goes with that, Christine, being upfront and communicating with our students as well. The last thing I was going to say is one of the most simplest things you could do is, even if you want to start from step one, is in your syllabus, add a couple statements. I have some statements in my syllabus. I don't know the exact wording, but I talk a little bit about a respectful classroom. Now, some of the topics that we teach can get a little heated. They're sensitive to individuals. And so we talk a little bit about, being respectful, yes, being on time, right? And how important it is. We got a lot of stuff to cover, being respectful to other people and communicating well, right? I mean, in your syllabus, just make not some like, you must do this and you must do this. Be more like, hey, in the classroom, we're going to have discussions. We're going to be respectful to each other. If I sometimes tell them, hey, if you don't communicate with me, then I can't really help you, right? I mean, those are some basic things that actually do speak of professionalism, right? When you get into the real world, your ability to be respectful to other people, to communicate, right? And give feedback and all that good stuff. So I think at the very least, we could be putting a little bit of that. So when our students read our syllabus, right, they can say, okay, these are expectations in the classroom, right? And even telling them your expectations first day of class, we tend to do that. I mean, the reason, and I sometimes just say, hey, the reason we do that, because these are important, these are important factors and important variables that play into, how the class is going to go, just like your job or your relationship with your boss and your work. Honestly, when we were in the classrooms the last year or two, I would then point to the wall and say, see those gen eds, and I would say, see those general education. One of them is on professionalism. I mean, sometimes it's as simple as pointing it out to them and telling them that there are expectations and that this is where you should be learning and practicing those those professional kind of strategies, right? So you can take them with you when you leave. So yeah, it's just interesting sometimes, just being simplistic with them.
Well, you would think that, for those who teach MCC 101, like I do a couple, and these are all things that we teach, right? We teach communication, talk to the instructors. When you open Zoom, show me your picture, show me you're there. When you write emails, write them professionally and so forth. And so after the course, you would think, well, the students will get it, right? And so they take all these classes, and it takes a long time for students to understand just one thing, for example, to communicate with the instructors. So in my other in the German classes, I do the same thing, Rob, and I also have deadlines, but I'd rather have them do the assignments late than not do them at all. And so, you would think that they would learn, but the learning process is sometimes very slow.
I also don't think they transfer things over all the time. So you say that in your class, they think you mean in this class with you, but they don't necessarily know that that also means over in my class with me. And so there is some of that where they almost need to hear that every single time. And every single instructor needs to say something about that so they know that, yeah, that's in your class too. And they just sometimes I think have a hard time with that. They aren't necessarily looking at these skills like things that they need throughout their lifetime, that they are going to need across the board, that it's easier to compartmentalize. And I wanted to say one thing about something that Jim wrote in the chat before I forget it and lose that. I don't know if you saw that, but he made a comment about having more students. What did you say, Jim? More students needing accommodations for anxiety than ever before. And I was really going to say, I'm hearing a lot of that, like Melissa was saying this week, especially the last 2 weeks, my students are just coming out of the woodwork with those types of needs that they need. It's other stuff that they haven't needed up, or they haven't said they needed up until the last couple of weeks. And they're really struggling. And would it be okay if I missed a class? I'm experiencing lots of anxiety. I have one class that's on campus once a week, and they're just trying to figure out how to manage and what to do. And I feel like they're looking for other types of support because they're just really struggling. And it's hard. And I'm agreeing with what you just said, Sarah. I need more patience. Patience would help because they are not coping very well. And I look around at some of them, and the ones I can see on Zoom, sometimes you get that little picture into their lives a little bit when you can see their backgrounds. And some of them I'm getting maybe why they're struggling a little bit. And I think not everybody has the best coping skills nor the best support system. And so for whatever reason.
My comment, Lisha, it's a flex class, and I really was hesitant to teach kinesiology as flex. It's become really difficult. I'm actually giving 2 midterms today, one at 4 and one at 6, because of the learning style in that classroom. Aside from that, though, I'm finding out about it from students sometimes halfway through the semester. They're coming up to me, and sometimes their overt behavior is it's hard when you're Zooming and you can't always see them other than their head. So I don't see the body language I do in class, and I just was stunned at how many people this semester, this midterm, needed some kind of accommodations due to anxiety.
Today I had 5 students in my micro class that were in complete tears. I mean, it wasn't just, it was red eye and tears, and they were all moms that, with the schools and everything, they now literally on Monday sent their kids to school, and then, found out at the end of the week that what they were expecting to be their, study break all of a sudden became the kids are going back. And I have 5 moms that just, fell apart, and I've never had that before. And so upset with the teachers at the K through 12 level that they're just frustrated with it. But going back to talking about deadlines, does anyone feel that maybe our drop date facilitates some of this procrastination about getting going with grades? Because I'm looking at our drop date of November 12th or 13th, depending on the course. And it's all right, you've basically sat, for 13 weeks, and now you've got 2 to 3 weeks left, and it's boom, time to do something. And maybe we should, as an academic council, look at moving that up into early October. Make the drop date 50% or 60% of the way through a class, because it just seems it's way too late into the semester to make any change.
That's really interesting. And I'd never really thought about that, but every once in a while it comes up, in those individual situations where somebody's saying to me, should I drop? And I'm always thinking to myself, for crying out loud, you haven't done anything and we have how many weeks left? Yes, you should drop. But the reality is, I don't know. I wonder, maybe if that was earlier on, maybe it would look different. I don't know why the dates are as they are. So you're saying, Evan, that it's about compliance and financial, like maybe it is.
A couple things. First of all, Melissa, everything you said about our panic students, I totally agree with. I literally, and you can't make this up, you guys, I got a text yesterday from a student with a picture of the new policy rolling back, etc. And the text said, WTF Illinois, do we have a class anymore? And my first reaction was, I can't believe I have a student sending me this. But then I'm like, okay, it's their reality. So I had to say, all right, yes, we're still going to have class and back up and do a little bit of, regrouping. And we are on campus because EMS has to be hands-on. We can't teach you how to do that stuff over the computer. But that was just pure panic in this. And my first thing was to say, why are you even sending me something like this? But then I started realizing these kids, they really are panicked and they don't know what's going to happen. And so, Melissa, I agree with what you say. Now, my late policy is different than like Robin. I saw the 10% per day and I thought, well, that'd be a great idea. But again, dealing with our reality in the world of fire and rescue, our patients don't give a rat's you know what about our excuses or why we're late or the dog ate my homework or my kid pooped in his diaper. We get a job to do when those tones drop and either we do it or we don't. So I give them one assignment that they're allowed to turn in late, but after that, forget about it. That's our reality, good, bad, or otherwise. I'm just sharing viewpoints, but I am seeing the panic from everybody.
And I did see that in the email that came out yesterday. So classes that were meeting in person that are, is it over 25 now
Right.
are moving online. I wonder about that for students because I have the one class I said to you earlier that meets and I think I have 19 students in it. And as soon, I don't know what teachers they have or who's telling them whether those classes have changed, but apparently they do know because they were instantly emailing me, are we still having class? And it just came in such a frenzied all at one time that I assumed they must have heard from someone else that there was a change in a different class. But they're panicking. And several of them were like, oh, good, because I'm having a lot of anxiety about being on campus. My parents don't think I should be on campus because of whatever, but now we're too far into what? Drop, switch, what am I going to do? I have to see it through. So I think that's just adding to the anxiety levels for some of my students is that the more we get into this, the more they're worrying and panicking.
And we too, we're worried as instructors. I have 26 and we did get approval because we're one over only because we have to do hands-on.
Yeah.
I can't teach you how to give a shot online. But they are panicked. And even as instructors, we've got just so much of what are we going to do? It's very difficult. And I try to stay calm, for these kids, but some days.
Yeah. Hey, Rob, what's happening with all the science labs? I feel like I could have asked this earlier. Are they all in person?
Well, more of them for the spring semester will be going to in person, but basically what we had to do was, if you can imagine like a 3-hour lab time, we had to cut it to like 2 sections of 12 students where they each get like an hour and 20 minutes. So what ends up happening is rather than having 24 students for 3 hours, the administration put us into an hour and 20 with 12 students. And then we get the new group of 12 students that would have been the other part of the 24 for the remaining hour and 20. So,
okay.
And
So even if their class is online, they come in for the lab?
Yeah, that's what we're doing for a lot of the classes in the spring. For the fall, we sent kits home and, we have people that have, they literally have bacon and then they have their fetal pig next to their bacon in their refrigerator at home. So, we've done so many different things for this fall semester, try to make everything fit. So.
But you wonder, but think about that. Like they have to have the lab. They have to have, yeah.
Yeah. And it's really a brave new world. Over here on this side and trying to get them the content they need and, you know, when you start sitting there thinking about how many of our students will be going on for nursing and everything, you know, how are they going to be doing with some of their content, not having as much time with the cadaver and everything. But the alternative is, you know, trying to do everything online. And, you know, when you look at online simulations, they're absolutely horrible, and they're not a way to go at all. So.
You know, I wanted to say, Fran, when you were talking earlier, I totally agree with you, because I teach, one of the courses I teach is human lifespan, and our nursing students, they have to take that class. And sometimes I hear them and they're talking about how hard something is, and, and how strict, right, some of the nursing is, just like you're saying, you're teaching firefighters or the PT, the OT, I mean, certain CTE careers, and I tell my students, well, there's a reason for that, right? I said, if I make a mistake today, I can come back next class and I can say, hey guys, I was wrong about this. It's actually this, this, whatever, it could be. I said, if you make a mistake, you could kill someone, right? I mean, so yeah, Fran, I think you're absolutely right. I think, based on, what you're teaching, where your students are at in a certain program, some of us are going to have to be a little bit, you have to be more strict. You're absolutely right. And in some situations, it's going to be a life and death situation, and you can't be, delayed. I mean, just for no reason. So I agree with you. The last thing that I'll leave you guys with is, I actually ran into Chris Gray today on campus, and we were having a conversation with a couple other instructors. It was just really interesting. We were talking about everything that you guys have talked about today, just the students and our exhaustion and their anxiety, and this, and going online, and how things, what's spring going to look like. And one of the things he said to me is, what I think we have to realize is higher education, or education in general, may never be the same. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, if you think about it, do I think we will get back? Yes, I do. Will it be the high percentage it was before? I don't know. I mean, it was just really interesting. And this is why I think, even professionalism is one of those things that, preparing students for, careers in the world, and even for the next year or two, we're going to have to continue to plug away, especially online, because I think there's definitely going to be more of it. I just don't think it's going to go away like that. So I just thought it was really interesting. He made just a comment about how this, this whole experience will change education moving forward. So just something to think about as well.
We talk about that. I talk about that a lot in my classes, and thinking about, like, last semester when this all happened, I was like, oh my gosh, if our students right now were teachers, because they're going to be teachers, a lot of them are planning on teaching, K through 12, would they even have the skills or the tools to, like, be so flexible to just, like, switch, right? Like, that is so hard. And I think that's why, for me, I'm trying to model those, like, really respectful teaching practices, because I have to model that for them. Like, what does it look like for them if they're the teachers? I mean, I have an elementary school daughter upstairs in her bedroom doing Zoom school every day, and her teacher's fantastic. I mean, she's probably learned more on Zoom than she probably would have, like, in class. I can't even believe I'm saying that. I cannot believe I'm saying that. And I'm an educator, but like, fantastic. But, like, that's because she has a fantastic teacher who comes from a fantastic school. Like, really, in reality, like, it's not been that difficult, but we have to model those things. And the schools aren't requiring the kids do not have to put their videos on. Just, isn't that, I don't know if you guys know that it is not mandatory by the ISBE that they do not have to put their videos on, because of, like, equitable issues and things around that. They don't have to do it.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah.
We had my son's what is it, student teacher conferences.
Yeah.
And I know many of my son's teachers firsthand, and I know a lot of teachers. I worked in a high school for a while, and they said the failure rates are through the roof right now compared to past. And a lot of it just is, you look at the parents who, have basically taken the approach of, well, I don't really care if my kid goes to school or not.
Right.
And
that's true.
there's so much apathy, and it carries over to the students that, we're going to be seeing it, very quickly. And speaking about seeing it, when you look at this, it's going to be interesting, not just short term, Robin, but think about this long term. After September 11th, we saw a drop in the population. There's a bubble. It's a decreased bubble. It's not an explosion bubble after September 11th with, people. I'm wondering, in 18 years, when you look at, enrollment, will we see a massive decrease because of COVID numbers? So not just
I see a lot of people pregnant. A lot of people are having babies now.
or yeah, will it be the opposite?
Yeah, it could be.
But Rob, several school principals have contacted me just asking some questions. What kinds of things are we doing? And talking about what their school experiences are. And that is one of the things that they're all panicking about is what are we going to do in the next year? Because you're going to have so many kids that essentially, depending on the wording you want to use, have failed to meet the requirements for whatever grade level. But what are we going to do? Hold them all back or just not say good luck with that?
You know what?
Change those standards.
You absolutely need to, because at the end of the day, students are like a hurdler. You set that bar low, a hurdler is only going to exert so much force. You set that bar a little bit higher for them, they have to jump a little bit higher. You go ahead and you say, you know what, you tripped over the bar and you still get a gold medal. They got nothing out of it. And as much as we're talking about a huge number of people, this is a generation that's coming through that the ramifications, because we force them to go online rather than trying to find a way to live with this inside of a school. It's on us, and we can't let them go through. We just can't.
No, because I think about what that will be like when that group gets to us. There's going to be a lot going on there. You wonder if they just pass them through, then what are the gaps in their learning? What did they miss? And
I think that's more so for the older students though too. I feel like the younger kids, they're pretty resilient.
No,
they can bounce back quicker.
I mean, think about language development. How much of language development is looking at the mouth? And if you have a monitor turned off, for a kid or whatever, their language development is just not going to be there. And it's something they're not going to pick up on. This is a long-term issue beyond just, 4 months. So it's huge ramification wise.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And maybe we can have another one of these at some point and we can continue this conversation.
She's cutting me off.
We need
I know what you're doing.
No. It's actually, I thought it was great conversation, guys. On behalf of faculty development team and Holly and the Center for Teaching and Learning, we are so happy that you guys were here, and hopefully you got an idea or thought process or something to think about. But we're trying to kick these faculty for faculty sessions more and more. Especially since we're all a lot of us are just, we're home at more, just trying to do them at different times and coming up with different topics. And I thank Lisha for taking this topic on. And again, I hope that you guys got something out of it. We are continuing to do it. And if you have a topic or there's something from today you'd like to continue and kind of help facilitate, in a few weeks or next semester, we would love to hear from you. We're inviting all faculty to join in, and just anything that we might normally talk about in the hallway or sitting in lunch or something. This is the kind of conversations that we'd like to have and share and connect with each other, because staying connected it's what's going to help us get through some of this as well. So if you think of something, we would love to hear from you. You can email either myself or Holly. Holly is taking care of a lot of the time frames, because the Center for Teaching and Learning actually has the calendar. But either one of us, or you want to put an idea past us, feel free to. We would love it. We would love to be overloaded and have these, every other week during the year, as opposed to not at all. So again, we appreciate you guys spread the word. We'd like to continue to have a great attendance, which I think today was fabulous. It's really nice to see faces. It's wonderful to meet some of the adjunct faculty that we don't get an opportunity to see. So you guys keep coming as much as you can. We appreciate that. And if anybody has any last minute questions, they could certainly stay on for another minute. Otherwise, hey, we'll see you next time. Thank you guys.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you.